Yes, let's begin. Thank you very much to everyone, and mainly to our very special guests of this afternoon. Okay, all of you are here. Diane, let me see, Lydia, who more? No, Michelle not. JoAnn Falletta, welcome, my dear. Tania, welcome, dear. Hello. And who more? Lydia, is one more. Who is it? Antonia, please help me.
Oh, no problem. Yes. Okay. We have, I'm sorry, I'm still struggling with my camera. I may have to just let go of that for a moment. I don't know it's never did this until now, so I'm so sorry. But anyway, the panel now we're going to have, of course, is JoAnn, Tania.
Diane, of course. Diane.
Yes, and then Tania, Leon. Tania here. Let's see. There's Tania. Yes, great. And then Lydia, is Lydia Yankovskova here?
Yeah.
Great, fantastic. And then Diane, and then myself. So we do have everybody here. That's great. Good. So now let's move on to Diane. Yesterday we had or was it? I don't even know what day I'm on. I think it was Tuesday. We had, yeah, it was yesterday. We had a wonderful session with Diane on her book, her 2 books, and she taught us a lot about how she thought about these things and what young conductors really need as they're moving through the world of conducting and their careers and everything. But anyway, Diane is the music director of the Allentown Symphony in Pennsylvania. She's also the music director and conductor of the Garden State Philharmonic in New Jersey. And she's established a reputation for her creative programming and innovative approach to concert formats. And recently, she was named as one of the top 30 professional musicians by Musical America, which is a really big deal. And Diane is particularly a very, very knowledgeable pedagogue. And so she's also taught national, international conducting courses and workshops, general ones, and also with her books as well. So, and the last thing I'd like to say is Diane is also a composer. I listened to her Mist recording, which is beautiful. If any of you have a chance to listen to it, the writing is so kind of sheeny and gorgeous. And I think you were writing this when you were in Italy or something. Yeah, you know, you had the inspiration of it, but it's just gorgeous. So anyway, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Diane Wittry.
Great, thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here today. So I wanted to talk a little bit about conducting careers and things I wish I would have known. And, you know, JoAnn Falletta, you know, talked about the different paths, and every one of our paths is different. I did not grow up in a musical family, so there was no sort of training at home to tell me what schools to go to, you know, how to navigate this sort of path. But some of the things that later on I realized, so one of the things I realized is I wish I would have actually stayed in school longer. You know, there's so much repertoire out there. And, you know, I did a master's degree at USC, and we had a good conductor's orchestra, but how many times do you really get on the podium? You know, and then you graduate and suddenly you're getting jobs and you're doing it for the first time. And so I really wished I would have stayed in school longer, maybe even done another degree or an artist diploma, and that I would have participated in even more workshops. And so I made up for that after the fact by participating in a lot of workshops. And you know, it's funny, in the opera world, opera singers coach with people their entire life, right? If they're going to sing a role, they immediately call and get coached on it. And yet so often as conductors, there's a little bit sometimes of a stigma, oh, I'm now a music director and I don't have to go coach with someone, or you don't feel comfortable sort of exposing yourself in that way. And I really think that we have to continue to learn our whole life. And whenever I teach a conducting workshop, I learn as much from all of the people participating as I hope they're learning from me. I mean, it's just, I really wish that everybody in our field would just keep learning and growing, because there's just infinite amounts of repertoire and learning how to work with an orchestra, rehearsal techniques, all of that. Another thing that I wished I would have known and done more of is travel and experiencing other cultures. I mean, I now have been to many, many countries and conducted in 11 different countries all over the world, but it really hit home when I was actually conducting, I was the understudy conductor for the Ojai Music Festival, and I was working with Peter Maxwell Davies. And so he has two styles. He has his very folk style of the Orkney Islands, and he has this very dense style. And most of the pieces we were doing were the very dense style. And, Lydia was talking about being ready for those opportunities as they come. There was a rehearsal where they forgot to pick him up, literally. And he was 20 minutes away. And so I went on conducting his oboe concerto for the very first time. And thank goodness I was well prepared. But I think I knew the piece analytically. I knew it sort of in a very precise way, but I don't feel I understood his music fully until I went to the Orkney Islands. And I went to the island of Hoy, where he actually spent his time composing in the summer. And I walked through the barren hills and I heard the wind whistling in my ears. And I suddenly went, this is what he's trying to capture. And it was the same thing when I was in Germany, and I was walking in a valley where there happened to be a stream, and there happened to be a goat walking by with a cowbell. And I suddenly said, this is Beethoven's Sixth Symphony. This is exactly what he was envisioning. And I never conducted that piece the same again. And so I really think it's critically important to spend time away from the music, but traveling, visiting countries, because that is going to inform your interpretation of the music, and you'll bring so much more back to it. The world is a very small place, and I didn't realize just how small when I was in school and when I was freshly out of school. So when I was in school, my stand partner, I think my first year, then later became the general manager of the LA Philharmonic, right? Who would have known? And in the same orchestra, principal violist Cindy Phelps is now the principal violist of the New York Philharmonic. People I worked with early on when I was fresh out of school, I worked in the summers for the LA Philharmonic. People I worked with there later became the executive director of the Chicago Symphony, the Aspen Music Festival, and Carnegie Hall. So people that are good at any level are going to rise through the field, and they may not stay a violinist, they may not stay an oboe player, but what I really realized is that I needed to have stayed in touch more, because all of these people could have enhanced my life in an even larger way if I had taken the time to stay in touch. And not that I couldn't call them up, but I went, what about those lost years in between where we could have exchanged so many really great ideas? So I remind people that anyone you meet is going to change and grow, and they're going to have a career path that's going to intersect yours again and again. Lydia mentioned how, that element of luck and things happening. And I have to say that most of my really amazing opportunities came not from me trying to be political and trying to maneuver to get a job. They came completely out of the blue in my mind and completely unplanned. And when you look back, though, there was always a moment of connection that sparked that. And so very small things have very large ripples in our life. And so some examples are, when I was a graduate student at USC, there was a doctoral student that was supposed to do a clinic with a string group from Utah. And like 2 hours before this clinic, she finds me in the hallway and says, I can't do this clinic. Can you do this clinic? Here's the scores. And so I said, sure, I'll do this clinic. And I did an hour-long clinic. It was great. The kids were wonderful. We had a good time. I think I gave the woman my name. And at that point, I was living at my parents' house. I gave my parents' phone number or something. 7 years later, this woman tracked me down through my parents. They were still living in the same place, same phone number, to invite me to conduct the Utah All-State Orchestra. Who would have thought that a singular interaction of 1 hour of time 7 years ago would have then led to something else, an interesting thing. And I had a great time working with those kids. A similar thing, I was at a conference of the League of American Orchestras, and I ran into, actually in the line to check into the hotel, a man from Japan. It was his first time at the conference, and we started chatting. And then throughout the conference, I realized he didn't really know anybody. So I tried to introduce him to people and to make him feel welcome. And so after that, we kept in touch, and that eventually led to 3 weeks of guest conducting in Japan. I didn't know at the time that he was actually the head of all the orchestras in Japan. So you never know who you're talking to. A last example of this, we all have so many examples, but one was we had a competition winner of our shot string competition in Allentown, and it was guitar that year, and the guitarist was Dennis Azabajek. And we stayed in touch, just a few emails, back and forth over the years. 10 years after that competition, he invited me to conduct a concert he was doing with the Sarajevo Philharmonic. And that was in Bosnia. And that eventually led to me actually heading up a cultural exchange program internationally between the United States and the Sarajevo Philharmonic, which was just a life-changing experience. But I would have never been able to plan that. I would have never been able to guess that that would have happened. So that brings me to how you handle yourself in all situations is important. Whether it's on the podium, whether it's off the podium, everything you do has a ripple effect. And you have to keep that in mind, that your character. I remember one of the greatest compliments I received was somebody told me once that I was a class act. And that actually meant even more to me than them telling me I'm a great musician or something, because it embraced who I was and my overall concept of what I want to bring to the world. And so you bring your musicianship to the podium, but you also bring your personality, your character, and your integrity. It's a whole package. And so I want to leave you with 3 questions to sort of ponder in your career. So what do you want to be perceived? How do you want to be perceived? Think of that as you interact with people. How do you want to grow as a musician throughout your life? Because it's continual growth that I think keeps me excited. If I can learn something new, a new interpretation, a new way of thinking about this. And then lastly, what lasting impact do you want to have? I have a slogan on the end of my emails that says, changing the world through music. That is one of my goals, one of my passions. And I am so excited to join with all of you, because together we are truly all changing the world through music.
Thank you so much. That was beautiful, Diane. It's interesting that Lydia first brought that up too, but I do think that people may not realize outside of our profession how much effect the conductor can have, not only on the social context of the orchestra and the audience, but with fundraising, right? Like, when you're meeting the right people and then you're bringing them in to help you, it's so important. But anyway, thank you so much.
I would like to make a question to Diane. Tania told some phrases like Afro-Cuban conducts, a woman conducts. I started our first symposium with this phrase, a woman conducts. A woman, for first time in my life, every newspaper always put a woman conducts. Never they put my name. No?
Yeah.
And this is incredible. This is awful.
Yes.
Because we are not only one woman. We are Diane Wittry, we are JoAnn Falletta, we are Ligia Madio. Yeah, for arriving this point, we worked hard. No, we are not only one woman. I ask to you, Diane, because you dedicate your life not only for conducting, but for teaching everyone what there are more than conducting. What inspired you to start this mission of show to everyone that conducting is much more, to open door? Maybe in one moment you felt the same I felt, or something like this, no? Or everyone, all of us feel, okay?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting because so often, even now still, you sometimes guest conduct somewhere and they say, you know, the first woman conductor to ever conduct this orchestra. It still happens. It's almost amazing that it's still happening. And I remember when I was conducting in Beaumont, Texas, that was one of my first orchestras. The newspaper they talk almost more about your clothes. And for me, it was my Scarlett O'Hara waist was the famous quote that I sort of followed me, where they would never say that for a man. They would never talk about how their tux looked or whether their shoes were, you know, a certain way. So things do change slowly. But I will tell you, my commitment to teaching really stems from the fact that although I studied with great people, I always felt like I never had enough knowledge, that there were so many things I needed to know to do my job, that I was always having to read things, trying to talk to people. And so I wrote my first book, Beyond the Baton, because it was really funny. I woke up, I remember it was February, and I woke up and said, someone needs to write this book for the field. Because I saw so many of my colleagues, we were young, and people were losing their jobs because they didn't understand the full scope of how to work with people. And I thought, if I can write a book that can make better artistic leaders throughout our country, in this case, I was really designing it for American orchestras because that was what I was familiar with, and to incorporate things I had learned, usually learning them the hard way by doing it wrong first and having to quickly adjust. But I thought if I could put this down on paper, I can help improve how we bring music and how music becomes something that we can gather together around within communities. And I'm very committed to the music, but also to how the music brings people together. To me is equally important in the equation. And the community outreach that we can create and the engagement that we can create. And so that's why the book really talks about those additional things besides just that subscription concert or that classical concert. And then I wrote, what happened is I started teaching because literally the book had just came out. I was then working with the Norwalk Symphony, and I remember the executive director and I sat down, and literally over a glass of wine, we sort of said, we should do a workshop, you know? So we literally put together a budget, and by the next week we'd run it by the board and we were going to do a workshop. And it started out, and at first I thought, oh, no one's going to come. You know, we'll just do like 2 or 3 days and we'll make it just for people that live within an hour or two to drive. And, you know, I was just petrified. No one's going to sign up for this workshop. And what happened is we literally had a waiting list. People were coming, people were willing to fly across the country. And so the course at the beginning was really designed less around conducting and really more about just the concept of the job off the podium. But then as the years went by, we brought in even more conducting, and it sort of expanded to then teaching conducting workshops in Europe and teaching them at various places around the country. From teaching the workshops, I began to realize that people had a singular type of technique, and many people did not have what I call vocabulary of conducting technique. And as I was teaching them, I found it difficult quickly to communicate things that they could grasp quickly and actually change. They would continue to do the same thing, and I began to realize that it comes down to the training of the arm and understanding how the muscles work and actually practicing new techniques as a ballet dancer would practice. And understanding that you have fingers, you have the wrist, you have the forearm, and you have the full arm, and how to train those so that you're not just using a forearm stroke all the time, that you have the variety to shift between these strokes. And so I read a lot of conducting books, and I thought they were all very quite confusing. And how could I strain this down to something that people could get very quickly to improve their technique and to be able to not just be a time beater, but how to actually communicate quality of sound, density and texture and energy. And so that's how my second book came about, Baton Basics, which is basically just a series of exercises to train your arms and your fingers and your wrists to think differently about how you communicate to your orchestra and how you create a connection to the sound, so that you're not just there being a traffic cop, but you're actually conducting music. And so now I'm enjoying teaching that also, and I'm working on a third book. So what I do is I find needs in I find national needs, universal needs. My third book, which will actually land up, I think, being a series of books, is going to be on repertoire, and going to be all those things that, like, I'm doing a piece for the first time. I wish I could have picked up a book that could have told me where are the traps, where are the problems, what do I need to know to navigate this? I'm not still in school, I'm not studying with someone. A book that will help people in that way, because I've crashed and burned where it was the first time I did a piece in front of a big orchestra, but I had never done the piece before. And I wish there was a source I could have gotten some knowledge from ahead of time. So hopefully, we'll all keep producing things that will improve the field and that will make it easier for everyone else.
Yes, it's a mission. Thank you very much for your mission to do this. I prefer to say to people that Diane is so generous that she will offer tomorrow another masterclass about conducting techniques. Please, Diane, what advice you would give to the audience?
I think similar. It's all about learning and growing, continuing to learn your whole life. Persistence. I always say the last man standing wins the game, if it is a game. So not becoming discouraged. It's a very difficult field. You can get easily sidetracked with people that have opinions on you. And you just have to believe in yourself and be positive and stay focused on the music and the mission of how you're going to bring that music to people, and trust that everything else will fall into place and that you are where you need to be. I'm always so thankful for the jobs I didn't get. And when you think back about it, you think about those jobs you applied that you were so disappointed you got that reject letter, and 10 years later, like, oh, thank goodness I didn't get that job. So you have to trust that you are where you're supposed to be. And I always say, take the orchestra or the opportunity in front of you and make it into whatever you want it to become. Yeah.
Yes,
happy and successful.
Thank you, dear. Thank you very much.
And I just want to thank everybody else for being part of this. Again, Maestro Ligia, Mario, and your entire team, Nailse here, and everybody has helped us so much to have women's voices talking around the world in this huge global diversity forum. And we're so grateful to you for giving us the platform for everyone to express themselves. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your time, your energy, your love. Thank you. Bye-bye, dear.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.